Not 11 o'clock a.m. I'd like to call to order this special meeting of October the 15th of the Columbus Municipal School Board. At this time, I'd like to call forward Pastor Charles Mullins, who is the pastor of Emmanuel Baptist Church, to offer us the invocation this morning. Pastor Mullins.
Will you pray with me? Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for the opportunity this morning to gather and, Father, to witness the work of our local city school district. And Father, I just ask right now for your presence in this place, for your wisdom to just fall upon our leadership, Father, Dr. Hickman and the board and other representatives. Father, that you would just give them your direction and guidance, how to best manage, guide, and lead this city in its educational work. Father, I do also just ask that you would be with our community and our school family, especially the Shanklin family who lost a precious child over this past couple of weeks, Lord, and that you would just continue to encourage and be with that family. Also be with our students who lost a fellow student and encourage them, and teachers who lost a child in their class. And Father, that the way that only you can do, Father, just to bring that healing and encouragement and, Father, hope to those that remain. Also, Father, we ask for favor and blessing for others that were affected by that fire and lost. And, Father, that you would just give them ease, the restoration of their resources, their home, the things that they need. And also, Father, just that mental and spiritual security that you're present and always guiding. God, thank you for this day. It's in Jesus' name that we pray. Amen.
Amen. Amen. Thank you, Pastor Mullins. At this time, we do have a quorum present this morning. There are 4 trustees present today. That moves us to item number 4, is for open forum. Did we have anyone to sign up for open forum this morning? Okay, if not, we will move to adopt the agenda. Board, this does require a motion. Is there a motion? It has been motioned by Mr. Lotzenheiser. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Spears. Any discussion? All in favor, please signify by raising your right hand. It is unanimous. The next item on the agenda is to approve the minutes, which is item number 6. We have minutes listed through A through D. If it is the pleasure of the board, we can take all of these at one time. If that is the case, this will require a motion.
So moved.
It has been motioned by Mr. Spears. Is there a second? I'll second that. Is there any discussion? All in favor of the approval of the minutes listed A through D, please signify by raising your right hand. It is unanimous. The next item on the agenda is Office of Superintendent Dr. Philip Hickman, and we will allow Dr. Hickman to share with us this morning.
Thank you. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to follow up on a question from Mr. Spears on the board. One of the things that we promised the board was the update on the textbooks. And so the first one is the update on the buyback of the textbooks. And the first bullet point is that we had contact Follett Textbooks, a company that buys back books, and their quote for purchasing our elementary materials was only around $43,183. But they also told us that the fall is not the ideal time to sell back textbooks because most of their people who have textbooks have already ordered them. And so, but we're also in a current process of working with them of buying back our bundles, and that's also where we may get the bang for our buck. And our bundles were kind of like the teacher books and those kind of things, which they're usually in short supply. The third bullet is myself and Ms. Lenore had met with representatives from Hoffman Mifflin, and they really wanted to partner with us. At first they didn't, but then they kind of want to partner with us as far as helping us sell back the books. They said that they have a lot of schools who may want to buy the materials and buy it still at a reduced cost, but it'll be higher than what we will get back at Follett. Currently, we have one school district and possibly a couple of more who are interested in purchasing our math and some of our math materials. And our Huffeln-Hoffman representatives are working out the details now to kind of show us that. And then we're still searching for additional buyback companies to see if are there other companies that are willing to partner with us in buying back our materials. The other question that was posed is regarding to, do we have adequate textbooks already in our current buildings? And I wasn't sure if it was a two-fold question, so I'm going to answer it in its totality, both at McGraw-Hill and then with our other subjects as a whole. Last week we had talked with the middle school and it explained the need for inventory. We figured out we were about 10 to 15 books short in the 7th grade history books due to a depletion in inventory, due to the fact that some of our books were destroyed or they're not just usable. And so we want to look at increasing the 7th, and also because there was an increase in 7th grade enrollment compared to last year. And so we're checking with Mississippi Textbook Inventory Management System, which is a surplus of materials, to see if we can order some textbooks through them. And also we're looking at trying to order more textbooks through some other online vendors. So we also, number 2, at our textbooks and technical manuals, we have been ordered at McKellar. We were short a couple of those books, and so we ordered those at McKellar. At the high school, they didn't express any need for any additional textbooks this year. They all had new textbooks in math, Algebra 1, Algebra 2, Geometry, and Stats, and also in English in our writing books. At the elementary school, when we look at some of our McGraw-Hill materials, reading and math, some of the programs contain hardback books, but much of the materials were consumables or workbooks, and so we have those. And our science and social studies are integrated throughout that series. One of the things we did consider was looking at how we're going to do science and social studies, and did we need additional books, or are we going to do it through a program? And one of the things that we were looking at was strengthening our magnets. In order to strengthen our magnets, it will kind of cover most of our science units. When we look at our engineering and when we look at our engineering and robotics and aerospace at Fairview, we can look at biotech and health and science at Franklin, and go on our computer science and communications technology at our communications and those kind of things. So we're looking at both staffing and material needs projected for next year when we really talk about strengthening our magnets, and we're going to carry those learning pathways of our magnets all the way to our middle school and through our high school. And there's already a state requirement. Ms. Lenore, what is is ICAP? ICAP, because since there's already a state requirement that ICAP, you have 16 kind of pathways or endorsements that you need from 7th grade all the way up. And so we're looking at kind of aligning our magnets and capitalizing on those pathways and meeting that, meeting and exceeding that state requirement. And so we do have to look at, what needs or things that we need in that. And the alternative school, they have all their textbooks. And so are there any questions over the books right now?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
We'll just start from the high school down because there was a lot of information there. And I just want to clarify that I heard you correctly. At the high school, the books that were ordered the first time under the former superintendent are the books that are currently being utilized at the high school.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And so the high school has all the books that they need based off the order that was placed and other books that were already in inventory.
Yes, sir.
Okay. At the middle school, did they receive any of the books that were ordered under the former superintendent? Or do they have new books
Yes,
through
sir.
McGraw-Hill?
They did.
Okay, and so they're not deficient in any way. They have all the books that they need for all the students.
We have 10 to 15, you mean the new books are from the history and social studies, so we're deficient 10 to 15 books from the history.
Okay.
Because we had a growth in enrollment and some of those depletion of resources through.
Okay, and so we're
Dilapidated
here
books.
halfway through October. Do we have those books ordered, or why are they not already in the classroom?
That's a good question. And we, through some of the questioning, we kind of asked.
So who's the
Middle
question?
school.
Who should the question be posed to?
It's fine as me as a superintendent. It's my responsibility to make sure that all of our buildings are staffed. And so that you're right. You're very correct, and that we were lacking in some of those areas as far as 10 to 15 books for our seventh graders.
So we don't have students sharing books, not having books. I just want to understand that we have all the books because we're halfway through this fall quarter, this
Yes,
part
sir.
of the year. And if we're needing 10 or 15 books, I know there are book companies out there that will get you 10 or 15 books overnighted.
Yes, sir.
So I guess my question is, why are they not here if we're missing 10 or 15 books? Whether that be to you or someone else at the middle school, I just would like to know. Growth in enrollment, that happened in August.
Yes, sir. I definitely agree with you.
Okay.
And that's something that we need to do immediately. I definitely get your marching orders.
Okay.
That's something that we have to do immediately. I know in the past there was a practice where we ordered textbooks in the school and then we ordered textbooks at home. And so some of that was confusion in the practice that we're not doing that.
Right.
And those kind of things. But you're right. I get your marching orders, and we definitely need to, in an immediate sense, order
Okay.
textbooks.
Right. And then lastly, the McGraw-Hill purchase that was made at the back in July, if I recall, or August, that was purchased, that was to cover the elementary schools, primarily the elementary school curriculum and different things that were being instituted, correct?
Elementary and middle, and then
Yes,
the
right.
section of high school.
Correct.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so do we have all the materials that we need? Because it would be my understanding, looking at the quotations that I reviewed, that they had completed a census as to how many books were going to be needed at each location.
That's a
And
good
it was
question.
my understanding from discussions prior to this meeting that there were still areas in elementary and other places that did not have a full supply of materials, that they're making copies. And I don't understand why we would have paid all the money we did to McGraw-Hill and them not be able to get us what we need.
And that's a very good question.
Okay.
And I do have an answer
So do
for
we
you.
ask for a refund?
No. Actually, the confusion of ordering the books, they had the right books that they ordered or put aside for us.
Okay.
But what we did as a district, we went back and questioned some of the results. We wanted to make sure that we were honest for all of our kids. So we had some high-functioning kids that scored, that didn't fare well on the McGraw-Hill assessment. So one of the things that we were charged with was triangulating the data. And so, you know, we kept listening to our parents and our principals and our teachers, and they said that we have students that shouldn't necessarily be where they are. And so we looked at other data points, and this is after the order was made through McGraw-Hill. We looked at other data points for our students, and we felt positive that we could move some students, a large amount of students, out of certain areas. Well, what that caused was, because technically McGraw-Hill and other areas are in high demand, they didn't put those books aside for the kids that we needed. And so they were on back order. And so it was kind of a mix between us,
Right.
kind of in late in the game, and we're really looking at how can we be honest with all of our kids and make sure that we're educating kids at the level that they are.
Okay, so a massive book company that's been in the business for many, many years, 2 months later, still has not gotten us the money, gotten us the materials that we need that we've paid for.
I don't know if it's 2 months, but you're correct. You're correct.
Okay.
And understand that the materials are individualized.
No, I totally understand that.
Yes,
But
sir.
the whole point is that we are here October the 15th, and there are still copies being made and things being done in the school, and I just want to understand, is it McGraw-Hill's breakdown or is it the district's breakdown?
You know, like I said, I would take the responsibility of us really trying to do what's best for kids and really not putting kids where they shouldn't be just based off one
Okay.
assessment.
So then, Dr. Hickman, what is the projected date for the materials to come?
They've given us a back order, and we've got various dates
Okay.
throughout the month of October for the things that are on back order. They've provided us with that. They've even gone to warehouses outside of the places that they normally ship from. We've gotten materials from Alabama, Oregon, just different places that they're pulling stock from to make sure that we have the books that are on back order.
And so then what are we doing to ensure that instruction is not being neglected because we don't have the materials?
Kind of what he said, that we're still making copies and those kind of things. And
Some of the things are online, too.
some of the things are online, and then also those students who don't have access to online and need to check out textbooks, we're allowed them to check out textbooks home.
Okay, and my last couple of questions is, as you just described, we had students that through the survey, the testing that they did to find out where students were placed, that they may have not necessarily been assessed correctly. And so therefore, by different points that we've evaluated, we decided they needed to be other places. But when the textbooks and curriculum were purchased, it was based off of those results. So that means that we could have oversubscribed to materials that we did not need for students that did not need them. So where do we stand as far as any recapturing the cost or shifting the cost to pay for new materials?
Exchange, or an exchange for
Yes,
the materials
I mean,
that are really
is,
needed.
What is because I mean, it would not make any sense to pay $30,000 more for materials that are never going to be used because
Just-
their assessment did not provide true results.
Just to
for
be
our
honest with
students.
you, we didn't pay the McGraw-Hill bill. We haven't paid it because we haven't received our inventory, sir.
Tammy? Okay. And not that I doubt you, but.
No, sir, that's fine.
She's a
She's the money
numbers
person. She is,
Okay, so.
although they were
So
off.
before we pay it, we will see, not necessarily us, I mean, I would think that since it would, if there's any adjustments, it would come back before us since we approved a certain dollar amount for purchase. But that will be brought back to the board for discussion and evaluation once everything is completed.
If you guys want to see the dollar amount of what was the
I mean, I
actual
don't want to
amount.
pay $30,000 less, I mean, more.
Yes, sir.
You know, and obviously I don't want them to send a late notice saying that we're $10,000 deficient either.
We totally agree with you. We're definitely in agreement. And so we're working diligently to make sure that our kids have what they need and those kind of things. And it's not untypical in education to kind of make do in the meantime. But with such a large purchase, I definitely feel your urgency that we need to have everything in. But we didn't pay the bill yet.
Okay. Thank you.
Great questions. The second part is one to kind of look over the data that we have available to us. And, you know, I send you guys information, or try to send you guys information to kind of update what's going on. And one of the things is the third grade reading gate. And I don't know if that information is really out there for parents to understand, but the third grade reading gate, basically, Mississippi law is saying that if our children are not on grade level at third grade, that they are not allowed to pass to the next grade level. And there's other provisions there that will allow us to look at circumstances or to make certain interventions like after school, summer school or those kind of things. But right now, if you were just kind of looking at the projection of how we are per school, first of all, I would like to say, you know, we're really looking for our data to be skewed to the right. Obviously, we want the left to be smaller, and we want to look at that projection that we have more kids on grade level. The other aspect that we wanted to be skewed to the right is the actual grade. I mean, obviously, we want to prepare. We have a preschool and kindergarten, so we owe it to our kids in preschool and kindergarten to prepare our kids that they are prepared for first grade. But regardless of that, when we look at our first grade and our kids are going through our system, we want to make sure that by third grade that we're lessening the kids who are not readers, and we want to put more kids into readers. And that's just kind of an overview of how to read that data. We're working with our principals to really look at identifying those kids. We're actually, if you look at the way our current curriculum is set up, we actually are meeting a lot of the guidelines that are set forth by the state in order to intervene. You know, when you look at individual RTI, and so RTI usually has a walk-through intervention model. Our whole district is kind of a walk-through intervention before you get to high school. And so every kid is already put in their different ability group. They're getting individualized attention at their grade level with those interventions, which is already big when you look at what the state is requiring. And so we're both meeting the mandate of separating and really meeting the kid where they're at and working on with our curriculum. It was kind of funny, the lady from, I can't think of her name, she's a professor at the W, and she said when she brought in some of her student teachers to look at our assessments, to look at the McGraw-Hill assessments, to look at the STAR assessments and their assessment, and all the assessments aligned. So the kids were projected to be where the kids were projected to be with their assessments. And so, and the other comment that she made, which is very important, is that the reading program that we have at the elementary level is very comprehensive. I mean, it hits all the components of reading, and it really builds on that foundation. I know we're starting a little late in the school year, but it's a very comprehensive program, and it looks real promising for our kids as they go through that program. She was very impressed. The other thing, I've talked to some of our teachers, and what some of the teachers told me at the lower levels, first grade level, is that the curriculum actually causes them to be a better teacher, in a sense. It allows them to be a better reading teacher, I'm sorry. And some of the things that they didn't learn in school and how to hook the phonemes and the phonetics and all those kind of things, that program addresses the need for our kids at the younger grades to be early readers. So this is the data that we have available, and we're going to continue to have more data. We're working right now with the McGraw-Hill data to be able to get our teachers in the practice of inputting information in on a daily basis so we can have that information for you. And then we're also working with our MAP data, our NWEA, which is the same thing, which is an adaptive assessment. And that assessment will allow you to look at the child. It's not a benchmark assessment, meaning that a benchmark assessment looks at the child where they are at the end of that grade. So regardless if we give them at the beginning of the first grade, it's going to assess them how they should be at the end of first grade. The NWA or MAP is an adaptive assessment. So it actually it's computerized where it gets a floor and a ceiling, and it tells you exactly where a child is and where they're mastery at. And then once they take it again, it does the same thing. And so you can actually look and see if a child is growing or staying the same or declining. And that will be good information for you guys as a board to really hold us accountable to looking at whether or not we are affecting student achievement. The other thing that is not on our agenda that's going to be on our agenda kind of in the future, and we just received the contract back from both of our lawyers, is Ingrade, which is a single sign-on data platform. And if I'm not explaining it right, Beth, please chime in. But the gist of it is that it's, first of all, it's coming out of our current budget. We already have monies for it where we had already eliminated programs. But what Ingrade will allow us to do is a single sign-on for not only the teacher, not only the principal, and not only myself as a superintendent or administration cadre, but allows parents and students to have a single sign-on. So they can just put, it just has one password, you know, one username, and they're able to look at STAR data. They're able to look at a child's MAP data. They're able to look at the McGraw-Hill data, and they're able to crunch it and look at it side by side and kind of really look at whether or not their child is improving. And so it puts the learning at the hands also of the child and the parent, that they're able to log on and really look at where their child is performing. So that's going to be a good thing. It's just not on the agenda because we just received the contract and we got it late. Yes, sir.
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
And to circle back around to the report that you're showing us here, because to me I'm having a disconnect on the information here and other information that we've evaluated.
Okay.
So take me back, not necessarily to the very beginning, but certainly the numbers that we're seeing here, for example, if we take Cook and it's showing at or above grade, 50, 62, 42, allow that to make sense to me. What are those numbers? Are those students? Are those percentages?
Those are actual students.
Those are actual students. Okay.
Number of students, yes,
Okay.
sir.
All right, that was what I understood.
Mhm.
And so if I look through each school and I see those numbers at the highest category all the way down to urgent intervention, it would lead me to believe that those number of students in those different categories are at that level on their reading assessment, correct?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
And so if we look at, for example, and not just to single one out, but if we look at Cook, for example,
Yes, sir.
it seems to, and obviously I understand there's more students at that particular location, but it appears to me that there are more students at or above grade level based off of the numbers you're providing here. And this was provided by McGraw-Hill. Is that where I'm missing the
No,
point?
sir. This is with the third grade reading gate. And this, where you have to be careful, is that the state hasn't established a cut score
Sure.
yet. And so the numbers are what they are. So what you just said was correct if you look at it from face value.
Right.
But we don't know a cut score, and we will not know a cut score until the kids take the test because it's the first time.
Right.
And so once they take the test, what they're going to do, Mississippi is going to look at the average of all the kids around Mississippi, and then they're going to say, this is where kids should be as a cut score. So we don't know. What we want to do is get all of our kids on grade level. And just to be honest with you, Jason, and talk to my principals, and I don't think any of us are publicly happy with, because if you still look at the numbers, that's almost 50%, sir.
So-
And so it's not necessarily,
So I have a question. If
Yes.
I'm looking at the bars that are in gray,
yes,
and if I see on watch, there are 23, intervention, there's 21, urgent intervention, there are 15. If I add all of those up, then those are also students who are in third grade who fall in that category.
yes,
Is
sir.
that correct?
Yes, ma'am, I'm sorry.
So if I did quick math, that's 59 students in third grade compared to the 42 who are at or above grade level.
Right.
Am I interpreting that?
You are interpreting it exactly right. But if Mississippi establishes, say they established half of the kids that are on watch as the cut score,
Right.
we still are not satisfied to have 30 or something, 30 or more kids
30,
who could fail.
36.
That's not okay.
Okay.
And so, we talked about it as a group because we even tried to determine whether we want 80%. What is 20% of our population at that school? What is 10% of our population? And so, as my principal staff, they were real adamant about the fact that we're not satisfied with having kids, not on grade level. We know the reality, which may happen, but we're going to put forth every effort to make sure that we decrease that number as much as possible.
Okay. That makes more sense to me. Okay. Thank you.
No, thank you.
Are there any other questions? Ms. Fisher?
Just a clarification. Dr. Hickman, you said that the stats that were given on this report were developed by whom?
This is STAR data.
STAR data.
Your
On the
STAR
third
assessment.
grade
It's a
readout.
different assessment than the McGraw-Hill assessment.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Are there any other questions for Dr. Hickman? If not, that brings us to item number B, and I'm going to include, if it's the board's pleasure, item B and item C, which are consent agenda items. I think originally item number C was removed from the consent agenda because we did have Mr. Lewis, who would have had to recuse himself had he been present today, but he's not here. So if it's okay with the board that we take all of those up at once. Is that okay with you, Mr. Latzenheiser, Ms. Fisher, Mr. Spears? Okay.
Fine.
All right. If we're going to approve the consent agenda items, that will require an action. Is there a motion? It's been motioned by Mr. Latzenheiser. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Spears. Is there any discussion? All in favor, please signify by raising your right hand. It is unanimous. The next item on the agenda is item number 8, Office of Instructional Development. Board, we've had an opportunity to review the memorandums of understanding between Cook Elementary, Fairview Elementary, and Mississippi Core. Are there any questions or anything about that? If not, I'd like to take items A and B up at one time, if that's okay with the board. To approve those two items, it will require an action. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Has been motioned by Mr. Spears. Is there a second? Second by Mr. Lotzenheiser. Is there any discussion? All in favor, please signify by raising your right hand. It is unanimous. The next item is item number C, consideration to approve budget increase from fund balance to purchase classroom technology upgrades. The second item is item number D, consideration to approve a one-time purchase of 2-to-1 at the high school, 2-to-1 at the middle school, 3-to-1 at the elementary school for classroom technology. We'll start with item number C first. This will require a motion if we do want to approve this. Is there a motion for item number C? Consideration to approve the budget increase from fund balance to purchase the classroom technology upgrade.
So moved.
He has been moved by Mr. Spears. Is there a second? Second by Mrs. Fisher. Is there any discussion?
I just need to ask one question. Is the source of these computers that we're buying, is that under the state contract?
Yes, it is, sir.
So everything on this list that we've been furnished is under the state contract?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Leistenheiser. Mr. Dunn?
And this is just basically, the D is, the purchases, all they're doing is approving you would be by adopting this resolution, just increasing the budget at this point.
Okay. So we have a motion by Mr. Spears. We have a second by Mrs. Fisher. If there's no more discussion for item number C, all in favor, please signify by raising your right hand. It is unanimous. Now moving to item number D, consideration to approve the one-time purchase. Is there a motion?
I would like to just ask that it be clarified that, to be purchased from
District manager.
state contract.
State contract.
I mean, everybody knows it is, but I just think it'd be wise to have that clear in the minutes.
In the minutes. Mrs. Ballard, do you have that language? All right, thank you. Is there a motion to approve item number D?
So moved.
It has been motioned by Mr. Spears. Is there a second? I'll second that. Any discussion? All in favor, please signify by raising your right hand. It is unanimous. The next item on the agenda is item number 9, Office of Support Services. Board, we've had an opportunity to review the revised academic calendar, and we've also received information for consideration to approve the demolition of the modern wall at the Magnolia Bowl. And I'll take these one at a time. Item number A for the calendar. Is there a motion? It's been motioned by Mr. Lotzenheiser. Is there a second? Second by Mr. Spears. Any discussion? All in favor, please signify by raising your right hand. It is unanimous. Item number B, consideration to approve the demolition of the modern wall at the Magnolia Bowl.
Madam President, I would
Yes,
like
sir.
that to read just a little bit differently, if I could.
Sure,
Can I just quote it?
sure.
Consideration to direct the district to remove plaques from wall to be demolished and return to DAR their plaques, preserve the others, and approve demolition of, and add the word southernmost modern wall, just to be absolutely
Absolutely
clear which wall we're talking about.
Okay. Mrs. Ballard, did you get all of that? Okay, all right.
Okay.
Is everybody clear on exactly what that means?
I just want to make sure that I'm clear.
Okay.
This language is changing in item B to say that property that was given to the district is going to be protected and returned to the giver?
Correct.
It was not given to the district. My understanding historically, what I was told is that it was allowed to be displayed there, but it's the property of the DAR. It's not property of the district.
Okay.
So we're not,
And there's something that's documented to show that it was,
according, yes,
there-
ma'am.
there is,
They have the history.
The local DAR sent to us information to support their request and to support their claim of the origin of those plaques that are there at the Magnolia Bowl. And so they are just requesting that we return those plaques to them because of the historical reference.
Aren't there maybe 4 plaques in total, and 2 of them belong to the DAR, and maybe 2 belong to the district? Or there's several plaques there.
There are 2 that are in question.
Right.
Wishes to obtain these 2, and they list, the one is the honor roll, and the one that says this gate, a symbol of remembrance, is dedicated to the men and women of
Right.
Lowndes
And it's
County.
had other locations where it's been held before now, but there's a work project, WPA plaque, I know out there that belongs to the district. And so they'll be preserved to be displayed at some other time.
question.
Ms. Fisher?
What is the possibility of those bricks being preserved as opposed to just being torn down into rubble and carted off? What is the possibility of bricks being preserved for possible sale as memorabilia?
I think it would depend on, just practically
approach.
speaking, one, which bricks you're talking about, because I think some of them are just really old, red, ugly, modern bricks, but maybe somebody would be willing to pay for that. Now, there are others that probably are more architecturally interesting, but I'm sure that the city just has, I think, volunteered to do this, and in demolition, that's one thing that, to agree to that, but then
Yes.
another to
Yeah.
start taking bricks
Right.
and be responsible for that. I got a feeling the city wouldn't be willing to do that.
And if I'm not mistaken, the part of the structure that has the most historical significance
It's not
is
being torn.
remaining, right? So we're just removing cinder block walls at this point. And you're right, Mr. Dunn, the city has not agreed to kind of pick and choose. They've just agreed to help with the demolition, all in one swoop. All right, so item number B for the demolition. Is there a motion? Has been motioned by Mr. Lightenheiser. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Spears. Is there any other discussion? If not, all in favor of item number B, please signify by raising your right hand. It is unanimous. The next item on the agenda is item number 10, Office of Personnel, consideration to approve staff personnel items. Board, we have had an opportunity to review this document. In order for this to be approved, it will require an action. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Has been motioned by Mr. Spears. Is there a second? Second by Mr. Lightenheiser. Is there any discussion?
Just one discussion, question.
Mr. Spears?
At the high school, English, was that?
Yes, it was added. It was added. Is there any other discussion? All in favor, please signify by raising your right hand. It is unanimous. The next item on the agenda is the Office of Business Management, Ms. Tammy McGarr.
Good morning.
Good morning.
We have provided you the consideration to approve the 2013-2014 amended budget, and that does require an action by the board.
Board, for item number A, consideration to approve the amended budget proposal for 2013-2014 requires an action. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Has been motioned by Mr. Spears. Is there a second? Second by Mr. Lightenheiser. Any discussion?
Just one question. This will reflect the action taken today on the technology, correct?
No, this
No.
is for the prior year,
Okay, I just-
2013-2014.
right, okay.
Are there any other questions?
Okay.
If not, all in favor of approving item number A, please signify with your right hand. It is unanimous. Mrs. McGarr?
Okay, the monthly financial statement reports, we have provided you each of these items. Are there any questions?
Board, are there any questions for item B, 1 through 8?
Yes.
Mrs. Spears?
You know what I'm going to ask. All right, so now that pen to paper has been worked forward with, it is my understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, that the fund balance adds up to,
$7,363,710.31.
okay. All right. Just making sure that that number was in line with what we calculated the other
The
day.
other-
Right, and that is before the 800.
Right, no, I
That's
understand
considered.
that. Okay. Okay. And the other question that I have is dealing with, bear with me just one second here, monthly ad valorem.
That's going to be item number D, if you want to talk about that.
Okay, yeah, we'll come to that then.
Okay. So if there's nothing else for item B, 1 through 8, and all of that was for our information.
Mhm.
No action is required. Mrs. McGar, item C.
Okay, item C is the summary of reconciled bank statements.
Board, do we have any questions for item number C? Okay, if not, Mrs. McGar.
D is the monthly ad valorem tax collection analysis report.
Ms. Spears.
Okay, my question really stems from what, and I assume since it's daily, since this is a special meeting, I can ask this question about section 42. I mean, it relates to collections.
It's,
Part of
yes,
ad
you
valorem.
can do that because it's part
I
of
just
the,
wanted to make
part of
certain.
the agenda.
Okay. All right, so it is my understanding that the lawsuit that Humphreys County and other had filed, that fell through, and so the district is going to owe money back on tax collections that were calculated improperly on Section 42. And that is something that, in my understanding, that the district will have to come forward with. There's only been a handful of people that actually went through circuit court to file to have a claim for it, and then that deadline has passed. So would it be my understanding we're $64,000 now behind collections, that as we get into the end of the year or first of the year when the collections go up, that we would, I don't want to call it rebate, but certainly allow the tax assessor to take money from those collections to have kind of in trust for that lawsuit to be, for that money to be returned?
I don't know that he would take it out on his end. I think we would have to pay it back.
Okay.
But as far as I know, the last I heard from Mr. Hemphill on this was that we were just waiting on that at this time. And I really don't know anything further on that. You would probably need to discuss that with him.
Well, and I guess my other question is why wouldn't be 100% of the deficiency that we're seeing collections go down year to date? Would that impact what it is that we are receiving currently, why we're not at the same level of collections this year as we are last year? And I know there's many variables that play into that,
Right,
so I'm not
right,
trying to
right.
isolate it down to one, but
I'm not sure on that.
Okay.
It could affect it, I would think.
okay. All right.
Are there any other questions about item number D? If not, Mrs. McGar, item E.
We have a consideration to approve RefPay online payment system to pay our sports officials.
Okay, Board, we've had an opportunity to review this document. Are there any questions for Mrs. McGar pertaining item E? If not, this does require an action. Is there a motion?
So move.
It's been motioned by Mr. Spears. Is there a second? Second by Mr. Lotzenheiser. Is there any discussion? If not, all in favor, please signify by raising your right hand. It is unanimous. Thank you, Mrs. McGar.
Just one clarification. Now, this is for all sports.
Yes, that's
Okay.
correct.
All right. The next item is item number 12, information items. We have received the safety report, and we have the dates to remember that are listed here, all of the football games, and we do show for November the 5th, our regularly scheduled board meeting will be held at 11:30 a.m. as opposed to the evening. And for the purpose of the public, we'd just like to let you know On November the 10th, which is the date that we normally would have met, there's going to be training offered in Jackson, and so the majority of the board will be attending that training. So we're having to switch some dates around. So November the 5th actually will be our agenda review meeting. November the 7th, there's a football game at Warren Central, but on November the 10th, our regularly scheduled meeting has been canceled, but the morning at 8:00 a.m. on the 10th is when the board will be meeting briefly, followed by an extensive meeting on November the 17th at 6:30 p.m., where we will continue everything that is on the agenda for the month of November. The next item on the agenda is that of Board of Trustees. Item number A, board discussion of goals and indicators. At this time, board, I'd just like to know if anybody had any input as to the goals for this year. I know we've received the document, and this is kind of like a follow-up from our board retreat that we had in September. We do have a mandate from Dr. Waldrop with MSBA that we solidify the goals and objectives from a board's perspective. Does anybody have anything that they would like to share at this time?
Madam President, one thing that I tried to do from our last discussion is to take what it is that you, as far as the framework, and try to come up with additional ideas and talk to other school districts that if you look at kind of what they have posted online and how they, one thing that a lot of the districts that have a very robust amount of goals and objectives and standards to follow is that they said they started with a synergy of just a few, as I think what you've, Dr. Waldrop helped craft, and of course you've expounded on, and different things. And so as far as, additional, I think that the synergy is created with this.
Absolutely.
And I didn't see a tremendous amount of, because it was my understanding from talking to them is that as time goes by, and whether it be from the different parts of your system or from the board itself, changes in policy or different things, is that you evolve into adding those respective other interconnected parts.
Absolutely.
And so I think that from what the baseline that Dr. Waldrop helped us kind of frame out a little bit, and then of course what you've been able to kind of put together would be a good, not just starting point, but certainly a more all-encompassing part of where we would need to start from. And then as time goes on and we see things develop, whether it be through curriculum, extracurricular, then of course add those additional steps.
All right. Thank you, Mrs. Spears. I did receive some feedback from Mrs. Fisher. There were some small changes that she was asking for, mostly grammatical, but one of the things that she pointed out, which is really the next step in this 7-step process, is that we figure out which reports we will request of the superintendent so that we can use that to monitor progress in the different 5 areas that we've listed as our goals. So that will be the next step, identifying what those reports are and the frequency that we will need those reports, us to sit down with the superintendent to come up with the strategies to make sure that we are hitting all of our targets. So if nobody has anything else, we'll take this up again and start to finalize it in November when we have our tour meeting on November the 7th. So thank you to everybody for looking into that. The next item under Board of Trustees is consideration to approve the revised RTP lease agreement for Union Academy. Are there any questions or issues or concerns with that?
Now, obviously I've read through the lease that's here, and David, correct me if I'm wrong, but even if the board approves it, still has to be sent and approved, or has this already been looked at, reviewed, and approved by Secretary of State?
It would have to go to the Secretary of State, even though we've talked to the Secretary of State, and I think it'll fly.
Okay. And as far as the, I think what Ms. Fisher and others had discussed is that the maintenance, even though I see it outlined in here, that it completely shifts all of that from the district to the leasee.
Mm-hmm.
If I might
Except Mr.
point out
Devine.
that, however, there's been a change so that if they decide they don't want to do some maintenance, in other words, let's say the roof falls in and they realize, they can't afford to do that for 11 months left on the lease or whatever, they would have the option not to do any maintenance. which the district would have the option to do it or not do it at that point.
Ms. Fisher?
Given that scenario, Mr. Don, if they chose, if the roof fell or there was some damage to the roof and they chose not to reconstruct or remodel, would that give the district, would the district be grounded in saying, then we can no longer keep this building open and you are now removed as a tenant?
It depends on how drastic. I shouldn't have used such a drastic example probably, but under other terms of the agreement, if it were truly a structural failure like that, then, you know, the lease would have to be terminated at some point. You couldn't, but generally speaking, you do not have an opt-out, you know, in this lease if they, I mean, you have not put in there, because you didn't know that this was coming up, you didn't know they were going to say, we want an opt-out for maintenance, then there's no provision that says if they opt out from maintenance, then you have the right to cancel the lease, kick them out after so many days, and that sort of thing. So, and we could add that to the lease, and you could approve it with that addition, and if they didn't agree to that, then it would stop. If they did agree to it, you would go forward, would send it to the Secretary of State.
But our standard language for terminating a contract is,
It's all in there.
okay,
It's
the
all in there.
30-day
Yes, ma'am.
notice. And
Yes, ma'am.
so, Board, what is our pleasure? Do we want to add the additional language for the additional coverage, or are you comfortable with the way that it's worded now in terms of our ability to terminate the contract?
I mean, I would make the motion that we approve it with the additional language added to the contract.
Okay.
May I take a shot at it? Or,
Mr.
we
Dunn?
got to have a second. I'm sorry.
Is there a second? I'll second that.
Okay. If lessee, we may call it tenant, but whichever, you know, opts not to
Restore, repair.
you know, engage in a maintenance, in a particular maintenance or repair, then a lessor school district will have the option to cancel the lease. I would think you'd want to give them on 30 days notice, on 30 days written notice.
Okay. Mrs. Ballard, did you have an opportunity to get the language? Okay, and I jotted it down too. So it has been motioned by Mr. Spears, second by Mrs. Verdell. Are there any other questions or discussion? If not, all in favor of approving the RTP lease with the amended language, please signify by raising your hand, your right hand. Okay. That is 3, Mr. Spears, Verdell, and Fisher, all opposed. We have 1 opposed, Mr. Lotzenizer. Okay, it does carry. The next item on the agenda is closed determination for executive session. Is there a motion?
So moved.
It has been motioned by Mr. Lotzenizer. We would ask that the public step out, and we will notify you of what business will be taken up.
Gotta take a vote.
And it is unanimous. It was motioned by Mr. Lotzenizer and second by Mr. Spears, and the vote was unanimous that we take up in executive session 2 issues. The first was a EEOC claim that is pending. The second was the consideration to approve the executive session minutes from September the 8th. There was only 1 action taken, and that was the approval of the executive session minutes. The motion was made by Mr. Lotzenizer. It was then seconded by Mr. Spears, and the vote was unanimous to approve the minutes. The motion was then made by Mr. Lotzenizer, seconded by Mr. Spears. No discussion, and unanimous that we return to regular session. The next item on the agenda is the approval of the bills. We do have 2 items, A and B, claim docket and the claims docket recap. Board, we've had an opportunity to review the items on the docket. Are there any questions? If not, this will require a motion, an action. Is there a motion?
So moved.
It has been motioned by Mr. Spears. Is there a second? I'll second that. Is there any discussion? All in favor, please signify by raising your right hand. It is unanimous. The next item on the agenda is that for adjournment. This will require a motion. Is there a motion?
So moved.
It's been motioned by Mr. Spears. Is there a second? Second by Mr. Lightenheiser. Any discussion? All in favor, please signify by raising your right hand. It is unanimous. Meeting is adjourned.